Through support and resources offered, we aspire to help individuals become shining light parents, meaning a shift from a state of emotional heaviness to one of hopefulness and greater peace of mind. HPH goes a step beyond other groups by allowing the open discussion of spiritual experiences and afterlife evidence in a non dogmatic way. HPH affiliate groups welcome everyone, regardless of religious or non religious background, and encourage open dialogue. Attendance at this meeting is voluntary. We hope that participants will learn from and share with each other. Discussions here are confidential and not designed to replace traditional therapy or spiritual counseling. Helping Parents Heal offers a wide variety of speakers, allowing parents to learn about many possible ways to heal. This includes presenters covering progressive topics such as afterlife evidence and connecting with children who have passed. The views expressed by our guest speakers may or may not reflect the opinions of Helping Parents Heal leaders and members. So we ask that you take from their presentations whatever may benefit you personally. Welcome,
Thank,
everybody.
thank you, Lynn.
Thank
And
you.
thank you everyone for being here. Let me read Shaunie's bio. Shawnee lives on the seacoast of New Hampshire with her husband Scott and their daughters Savannah and Seraphina, where they love to take walks on the beach, swim in the pool, and play in the yard. When Shawnee isn't with her children, she enjoys playing tennis. Her boys, Mickenzie and Tristan, have grown into compassionate men. The cover of this book, designed with Baylie in mind, tells the beginning and the end of her story. The front cover displays the last photo of Shawnee's joyful daughter. A part of her soul is always at the beach. She is the sun, the water, and the beauty in all of it. The back cover shows Shawnee and Scott sitting on the side of the sailboat on the trip described in the book. Sailing often brings Baylie to mind. Shawnee and Scott continue their efforts to honor Baylie by creating change through Baylie's Wish Foundation. The foundation is building a coalition of advisors to establish safer protocols for colleges, engage school administrators, and partner with legislators to expand the amnesty law and duty of care. As a registered nurse, Shawnee was unaware of the life and death consequences of Baylie not having a healthcare proxy. She and Scott hope to introduce a bill to Congress to enact Baylie's law, which would require healthcare proxies and the HIPAA forms as a simple addition to the post-secondary admission process. Baylie's accident was preventable, and without changing policies, educating students, and working towards safer colleges, young people and families will continue to suffer needless tragedy. So welcome, Shawnee. I'd love to have you just tell us briefly a little bit about your children and your husband, your family.
Thanks so much, Carol. So I had a family on both ends of the spectrum. I had three children very young before I was 23. And then in the marriage I'm currently in, my husband Scott had never had children. So when I met him, I was 39, and he asked if I would do it again. I agreed, and we started on the process of IVF. And we had our embryos, and I had transferred Savannah at that time. I was 7 months pregnant when we lost Baylie, and she had seen the baby on ultrasounds and was excited for the baby. So now I actually have two little girls at home. I have Savannah and Seraphina, and they are now 4 and 6.
Well, thank you. And I'm sure Baylie held them before they actually even were here. So, but I'm excited to talk about your beautiful book, Baylie, A True Story, A Life Shattered, A Promise Kept, and a Secret Revealed. And I will ask you more about the title a little later in our interview. But, you know, Baylie is a very personal account of your daughter's tragic accident and the aftermath. What compelled you to share this story with the world?
Well, ironically, Baylie had left breadcrumbs before she left this earth. And connecting the dots of her life before she left started to make sense to me. Baylie had always wanted to write a book about my life. And the summer before she passed, she had started my book. Um, I I was indifferent. I understood her desire to write my story because I had been through a lot of things had happened, and she felt that my story could help other women. Um, we had also just recently read a book, or she had just recently read a book called A Beautiful Terrible Thing, which was written by Jen Waite, and it was about infidelity in a marriage. And Baylie read it and said, "Mom, this is your story. You need to write a book." And I said, "Oh, Baylie, I don't know that I want to relive that." And she said, "Well, I want to write it." So she began writing the first chapter. That was probably in August. And then on August 19th, when the tragedy occurred, I just knew, like I knew that I would finish her book and that she knew something I didn't know, that the book was ultimately about her.
Yes. I mean, I read your book, and unfortunately, you had a very rocky road for a long time. I felt your pain, and I'm so sorry about that.
Yeah.
Um, you describe Baylie as very, intuitive and mature. How did her personality did that help you navigate the aftermath of the accident? Did that have any effect on you, knowing how she would be?
That's a really interesting question. As all of us experience in those very early days, it's absolutely life shattering. You wake up in the morning and the world no longer looks the same way, right? And you just can't believe the sun is rising and there are birds outside of your window and it's stunning. It's shocking. It's like, how is this possible? My daughter just died. So after that, what I call the twilight zone of just being completely bewildered on a planet that you don't recognize, in a body that you don't think you own anymore, you just don't even know who you are. And going through that intense grief, I started to see this maturity and intuitive soul who had come to me in her form, her human form, um, as this very wise person, this very wise soul. And she was trying so hard to connect with me and to bring me peace and to teach me. And I had to surrender to that. And so, yes, you know, seeing that Baylie had had such an accelerated life so early on, she had experienced so much so quickly, had matured so fast. And when other people described her, it was unique. Her guidance counselor would talk about Baylie in such a way, and I'm her mother, so of course I'm biased, but she would say, I have had thousands of students come through my door, and no one has impacted me the way that Baylie did. Um, she would talk about Baylie being such a bright light and just being so compassionate and intuitive and mature and aware. She described her as being very self aware for her
Yeah.
age. That most
And
kids.
that doesn't surprise me at all, not just because you're her mother, because I'm a caring listener, and over these years, I've spoke to so many parents, and I always tell them when they say, "They were just special," and I said, "Exactly. They are incredibly evolved. They are that's why they are on the other side now. They came here to I believe they're our greatest teachers, and they're different." I mean, that's what I always said about my son. People would say, "Oh my gosh, he is mature and caring and just they put others first." So I it's not just because you're her mother. I'm sure that that is exactly how Baylie is.
That
Now
is.
you also said that she in the hospital, you felt her communicating without words. Can you explain that a little bit?
Yeah. So Baylie was in what they call an intense coma. She was as close to death as you can be in a human body. She had a Glasgow coma scale of 3. And there are many states and many countries that will not keep a patient alive with a Glasgow Coma scale of 3 because it is just so low. Um, that is, she didn't respond to pain. She didn't move. She didn't open her eyes. She didn't breathe on her own. There was almost nothing there. Um, and she was like that for over a week before they felt that she came up to a 6, which again is incredibly low. In that time frame, I had strangers reach out to me who were intuitive, who would say to me, I can see your daughter holding on by a silver cord. She is not in her body, she's above it, but she's trying to get back in. And I thought that was so strange because they didn't know the extent of her injuries. And then um, Baylie was, she was sending signs, but not obvious signs. It was as though she had lined the signs up before she left, as though her soul knew that she was going to cross. And, the book on her nightstand in her dorm room was about being in a coma and being trapped, her soul being trapped in a coma. And it was a study done by Dr. Adrian Owen called Into the Gray Zone. He did a study that found out that 25% of people who are either severely vegetative or in a coma, lifelong, trapped in a coma, and no one thought they were in there, no one thought they could hear them or were conscious in any way, actually could hear everything and were completely conscious. And some of them had been like that for 15 and 20 years and no one knew it and no one spoke to them like they were there. I thought, can you imagine being in this body and no one even knows you're in there and nobody speaks to you? So, reading that book and turning to the page where she last had her bookmark was really the biggest light bulb for me. It was an aha moment of I just said to myself, "Oh my God, she knew. She knew." And the bookmark was about a 19-year-old girl who's hit by a car who is in a coma. And it talks
Isn't
about doing a functional MRI, which is a trial study.
Isn't that incredible? It's I hear these stories all the time. They know. It's their soul. Their soul knows. I know Tyler knew by things he said, and his was just an accident where somebody had hit him. So it's not like he should have known, but they know. They know, and it's just more validation of I believe the soul plan. Would you were you spiritual prior to this?
I would say I was spiritual. So I was born and raised Christian. Um, Baylie had been to Christian camp. She loved going to church with my parents. Being a nurse, working shift work, I had really left the church. I mean, I shouldn't say I wasn't religious, but I didn't practice, and I was leaning more towards being spiritual than anything else. I had been to see mediums, so obviously I wasn't thinking that seeing a medium was dangerous or evil in any way. And always found that the mediums were spot on. And I thought, gosh, there's just so much to this. How could they know that? And so again, I felt like this was leading me. This was in my path for a reason because this would I would need this.
Yes, it's all part of the plan, whether we like it or not. It's and actually once, time goes on and we open ourselves up, I think it makes a big difference and it really helps us to move forward, knowing that it's it was nothing we couldn't have changed it. And I think that's why I tell people don't, just regardless of the situation, there's never a reason for guilt because it's just that was their plan. At least that's how I feel, and
That's how I feel.
that's what I've been told. Did did this affect your I mean, did your spiritual belief I know now it's strong, but when this her transition first happened, how did it affect that spiritual belief? Did it immediately expand or did it
Um, I'm gonna say no. I was angry. I was angry at God. This was so unfair. Um, Baylie and I were closer than mother and daughter. She was my soulmate. which is a hard thing to say when you're a mother to five children. But she was just so easy to know. She could finish my sentences. She
Mhm.
could read my mind. We could just look at each other across the table and she knew what I was thinking. There had never been anyone in my life who knew me the way that Baylie knew me. Not my sons, not my mother, no one. And so when this happened, half of me died with her and I couldn't find myself. So that was an incredibly difficult thing to cope with. And here I was about to be a new mother in 3 months. I was delivering a baby. So that was all incredibly difficult. But Baylie was a very strong spirit and very, very persistent. Before she crossed over, she was already communicating with mediums. I had a grief counselor who my husband had reached out to because we knew at that point that Baylie was not going to make it. And she came to me and said, I don't know how you feel about this, but she said, I've had another mom who's become quite intuitive come to me and she drew me a picture and she said, there's a client of yours who has a daughter who's going to cross over. And this is what she looks like. She drew a picture of Baylie. I mean, I can't tell you how similar this picture was. Um, and then she drew a picture of her brother and she said, there is one family member, one sibling who will not let her go. And, he's the tallest one, he has glasses, and he's really struggling with this. And Baylie is holding on because of him. So she was already communicating with me. So she pursued that to say, Mom, I'm here, Mom, I'm here, Mom, I'm here. I mean, the TV would turn on every single night for probably 2 months at 3 in the morning. There was no denying it.
Isn't that crazy? I know they work so hard early on. I mean, the crazy things that happen, it's just you can't make it you can't make it up. That helped me tremendously because they're saying, we're here, we're helping you." Do you believe that Baylie, um, she had a spiritual purpose that she was able and a calling that she fulfilled? I mean, based on everything I've read, but if you could talk a little bit about that in her short life, if you feel like she fulfilled that spiritual purpose and calling.
I do now. I feel like it's full circle. I continue to learn more about her purpose. Baylie was the kid in school who would stay behind and help the disabled child. The teachers would say to me, the biggest challenge we have with Baylie is that she will sacrifice her own work to help the children in the class who have disabilities. And as a result, she doesn't complete her spelling or her art project or her whatever. And it was like, oh, okay, I want you to be nice, but you can't be that nice because you're not doing your own work. So then as things moved on and, she was headed to school to be a doctor and she was very dedicated to that. And people would describe her as someone who always made others feel good. And then when she passed, and I started this foundation, which I felt like she was saying to me, Mom, we need to help other girls. You need to show other girls that this is happening. The tragedy is hard to talk about, but what happened to Baylie was covered up. And I have since, with the foundation, really opened a can of worms that all these parents have come out of the woodwork to call me to say, yes, me too. And it was covered up too. And nobody talked about it either. And my daughter was told to keep quiet. And oh, it's heartbreaking how much of this is still happening today. Then, and this is a little off topic, but Gabby Petito's mom reached out to me in my foundation and she said, I need to connect with you, to work together with you, to see if there's a way that our two foundations can team up and educate young girls on the dangers, the hidden dangers of college, and hers being more on domestic violence. And she started talking to me about strangulation. Well, in Bailey's journal, her first experience with a boy, she was strangled quite significantly and could not get away. And so again, she was communicating to me, telling me, Mom, that was my purpose. I have a bigger purpose. I'm going to save lives.
Wow. Well, that's what they do. I mean, think about all the diseases that have been cured. I mean, these kids, and I think they come here and their experience helps um, others. So they come here as a gift, really, to help others. It's hard for us. It's hard, but there's just so much. There's just so many um, things that come out of it. Diseases that are cured from children that unfortunately cross early. But I don't, I believe that that was their calling. That was their calling. Do you meditate? How do you connect with her? And tell us about some of the signs. We love to hear about those.
I would love to learn to connect with her. My sister is very intuitive. My sister is the medium. She can connect. I can't. I would love to be able to do that, but I just haven't been able to find that that path.
Well, you have two little girls. That's a little tough.
It is. But so one of the things I said to Bailey when she was in a coma was, I said, Bailey, it's time to go with the angels. You need to let go. There's nothing left. Your body is so broken. You cannot stay in it. You can't come back to us. But I said, when you go, you need to let me know you're safe. I need you to send me bluebirds. We had tried to get bluebirds in our yard, Bailey and I, for 3 years. We even bought real live worms, kept them in the fridge, and we put them outside in the morning. We had two different bird houses and feeders. We studied, like they said, make sure it's facing east. It has to be a certain height off the ground. We did all of it. Nothing. We couldn't get these birds to come. Sure enough, almost on her birthday, we were going for a walk, and there was a tree full of bluebirds in our yard. Full, full, full. There had to have been 50 bluebirds in this tree. I couldn't believe it. And then that spring, the bluebirds nested in the bluebird house off our kitchen. First time ever. And they've never gone away. We have bluebirds
Isn't that
all the time.
amazing? Oh. That's
Hmm.
so beautiful. That's so beautiful. I remember with Tyler, I was gathered around my family, and my nephew just randomly said, "I wonder if we have blue butterflies here." And right then, this blue butterfly started flying, and it just circled around us. So we have a video of it, and it just landed. I haven't seen one here since, but so I actually got a blue butterfly tattoo. I'm not a tattoo person, but I was like, I got to do this. Tyler's going to be saying, "Great job, mom." So I got a blue butterfly tattoo. It's just incredible the things that they can do, and they work so hard to do for us.
They do. They really do. Well, and on the boat, the sailboat, the gentleman on the sailboat with us, there were other guests, and this particular man we hadn't met before, but his daughter's 5-year-old daughter had died. And when I found that out the night before Bailey's accident, and I looked at him like he was a superhero. I mean, I could not believe how much he had accomplished in his life given this horrific tragedy that happened to him. And for me, as for every mother, losing a child is literally the worst possible thing on the planet that could ever happen to you. And I was so grateful that I hadn't had that path, or so I thought. And it was interesting, my reaction to this gentleman, because I, I'll never forget it. He was sent there, he was on that boat as a guardian angel for me to prepare me for what was about to happen the very next day. And he told me about the dimes. And he said, not long after, maybe a year after he lost his daughter, he climbed Mount Everest. And on the very top of that mountain in the snow was a dime.
Wow. It's all in divine order. Everything. If you go back, and I tell parents this, if you go back and you and our kids will remind us. They'll put these things in our heads, things that were said, and there was just no coincidences. And they are preparing us. They are prepared. I mean, we are they're arranging things to help us along because they know how hard it will be, and they want us to work at finding our way to the other side, which we can find that joy and healing again. Did you find healing writing the book?
I did find some healing writing the book. That being said, it had been quite some time. So I had done a lot of my own healing journey. through the children. So I had Savannah, and that was really difficult that first year. And then um, I went back to the breadcrumbs. What did Baylie leave? Why did she do the things she did? Why did she give me a baby gift in August when the baby wasn't due till January? Why did she write me a card on the front, the back, the sides? She wrote on all sections of the card what an amazing mom I had been and what a great mom I would be to this baby. And she gave that to me early. And I just, these things kept coming to me. And then I remembered what she said in the kitchen. And she said to me in July, maybe, we were looking at the embryos at the kitchen table because we had images of them. We'd done IVF, we'd done PGS, and PGD testing. So we knew the sex of the embryos. And we had four viable embryos, three female, one male. We had transferred a male and a female with Savannah and lost the twin, the boy. We had two female embryos left. And Baylie said to me, Mom, I promise you, if something happens to me, I'm coming back as one of these embryos. And I said, Baylie, why would you say that? And she said, Mom, like nothing's going to happen. I just want you to know, I'm just promising you right now that I will come back. And
Wow.
that haunted me. I could not get that out of my head. We went back and transferred the second embryo when Savannah was 7 months old, which is probably too soon, but I was grasping at straws. We had always planned on having two children anyway. And I said to Scott, it may not be ideal. Here we are in grief, but it's now or never. And, I'm not getting any younger. So here we go. Well, I miscarried that embryo and I went to see the medium, and the medium said, Your daughter has a message for you. She wants you to know that the soul was not a match. Does that mean anything? I nearly fell over. Nobody knew. No one knew I was pregnant, yet alone lost the baby. And he says, The soul was not a match.
Wow.
Yeah.
And what better way to help you move forward than having those, having your girls, and it does keep us focusing on you had them, and some of us don't have that, so we have to find other ways. I know that I journaled, I worked with the pendulum, I did everything. So how has your soul and understanding of the soul and the afterlife evolved since Baylie
Um,
transition?
Again, it's been really fascinating. I completely believe that we continue on to the next life, whatever that is. We absolutely um, we don't die, and there's no question in my mind that Baylie is eternal. And for me, my own personal belief is that we reincarnate, and I do believe that. Whether that means there's different speculation on that, whether that means a part of your soul remains on the other side and a part of you reincarnates, or whether all of you reincarnates, whatever that actually means. But I've been following Jim Matlock's website, and he talks so much about young children describing earlier lives, whether it be war in Vietnam or something completely bizarre. And there's just so many things we don't know that exist out there, including people who hit their head and suddenly speak a different language and they can't figure that out either. So, I just think there's so much more that science can't quite understand.
I completely agree with you, and I never believed in. I mean, I never believed in a lot of this before Tyler's passing, and now I know. I don't even, I know I say believe, I know, but I agree with the reincarnation. I was afraid of it when I started to believe it. I read about James Leininger, I think his name is, and I read Many Lives, Many Masters by Brian Weiss. And it scared me at first, but what I have come to understand is our soul is just so much bigger than I mean, we're already on the other side. This is what I think. We're already on the other side, and I believe that they can bring some of their energy back and reincarnate. They can bring more of it back, but regardless, what I've been told by mediums, because I was researching it because it scared me. I thought, what if he reincarnates and then I don't see him? And that just will never ever happen. They are there. They are there. And Tyler has assured me that he will be there regardless. So I had a reading where, well, it was my niece's reading where she said that they told Tyler had said he would be she'd be looking at his face in one of her children. And that, again, that scared me. But now I just think it's amazing because I still, she's had her children and I still talk to Tyler. He's still there. And
Good.
so I have no fear of that at all. I have no fear of
Right.
that at all. And he's also told me, uh, and I just hear him. I don't hear others, but I've learned to connect with him. But I've been on this journey for a while. I hear him tell me that they are, when I said, I'm just so sad, what would you be doing? He has said, I'm doing everything that I would be doing, everything that I would be doing there, Mom. And I'm happy. So I know that they're all very happy.
That
And
is
that's,
beautiful. I've
and
heard that too.
oh, yes, because, originally I think we all feel like, well, why them? They got ripped off, but they're not ripped off. I mean, they're great. This is just all part of what was supposed to happen again. And I think when we can see life that, or when we can see this that way and just look at the gifts they give us. I mean, obviously we would rather have our kids, but since there's nothing we can do, we have to, dig down and look at the gifts that they've left us. And there's so many, the fact that look what we know now. And if I wouldn't have been searching for these answers had something like this. I was scared to death of dying.
Exactly.
And so
I was too. Yeah.
there's a gift there for sure. So when you wrote Bailey's story, um, would you say that do you feel like she wrote it with you? I mean, when I wrote my book, I
Absolutely.
felt like sometimes I'm just writing and then I always say Tyler wrote it with me because did you feel that energy? Tell
Oh
us
my
about
goodness. I even say that in the book. It's completely she's writing through me in so many parts of it. I wrote that book when it was first written before it was cut back. It was over 500 pages, and I wrote it from September till January, and I was done. That's how fast I wrote it.
wow, that is
Yeah,
fun. I think
yeah.
it took me 4 years. But
No,
I
I just
started and I'd put it down and I'd start and I'd put it down. So,
it was all there, and I had to just pour it out onto paper. And I had a sitter through the days during that time. And my husband said, just go do it. I went to the library every day and I just poured it all out. And there was not a day. I would be writing for hours and hours, and I'd be like, I can't stop because there's still so much more I need to get out.
yes,
So, exactly what you're saying. It was Baylie speaking.
that's amazing. If Bailey had to say something to you today or share a message with the world, what would you think that would be?
I think she would tell me that she was proud of me, and I think she would feel good knowing what I'm doing in her honor now, to try to change things and save lives. Bailey's favorite quote was, be the change you wish to see." We have a Christmas ornament that she chose that says, "Be the change." And, there are so many things broken in our world, as we know. We live in a very toxic world right now. But if you can pick one thing and you can do something better, do it. And that's what I'm doing. And she is paving the way for me. She is connecting the people for me. They're coming to me. She's doing that. I mean, we're working now with the National Crime Prevention Council, and they have agreed to partner with us and send newsletters to every college in the United States and every police department in the United States. We're working on a program like MAD or DARE, and it would be for seniors on the hidden dangers of college that they don't teach you everything from dangers on social media, sextortion, ride shares, roofies, all of it.
Yes, that's wonderful. And I know you've been having some legal hurdles or you've been working on the proxies.
Yeah.
Do you want to tell us a little bit about that? And I know that um, and more a
Yeah.
little bit more about the foundation.
Yeah, so the healthcare proxy was one of the, I mean, in our case, we just hit roadblock after roadblock after roadblock. We arrived at the hospital. We weren't allowed to know anything when we got the call on the sailboat, as many of you probably have experienced. Just come to the hospital now. And then when we got there, we found out what was happening. At that point, the police said, "We believe your daughter has been drugged. We think that she was roofied." And so we asked them, "Well, have you drawn toxicology, blood and alcohol levels?" I mean, you would just assume you've got a trauma patient. Of course, that was done. No, in the state of Florida, it is standard practice that drugs and alcohol are not tested on a trauma patient because insurance companies will deny the claim. So at that point, we asked for it to be drawn, and we were told that there was a HIPAA violation. So without HIPAA waiver, without the legal paperwork, we didn't have the right as parents. I mean, maybe Baylie didn't want us to know that she had been roofied or had alcohol in her system. Crazy enough. So then the ethics board got involved, and then the police had to write the order. And by the time all this nonsense happened, the roof and all was long gone. It was 36 hours later. So we have them on video and we have all the evidence, but we didn't have the drug in our system, so we were never able to press charges. We also
Mm.
didn't have access to medical records, so we couldn't get a second opinion. And there were all kinds of neurologists reaching out to my husband saying, "Send me the scans, send them to New York, send them to Mass General. We'll give you a second opinion and let you know how bad this is." We couldn't get them because we didn't have a healthcare proxy. Baylie was over 18. Those medical records are private until she dies but at this point, we don't know because she's in a coma. Had we known, we would have discovered that there was a significant brainstem injury that was incompatible with life, and we would have let her go. We would have stopped life support and basically pulled the plug at that time. But we didn't know that. And 6 weeks later, when she was transferred to Mass General, by then she was off the ventilator and breathing. And we were in a real conundrum at that point because we had a child who was in a vegetative state, who would never open her eyes or move her body. It's really interesting the definition between a vegetative state and being in a coma, because to our eyes, she was in a coma. I mean, she's asleep, has never opened her eyes and never moved. How is that not a coma? But according to them, the scan showed sleep wake cycles in her brain, which defines a vegetative state. But regardless, that was how she would spend the rest of her days, laying in a bed, never able to communicate or understand anybody. And all of a sudden, we're doing a functional MRI, which is what the book was on her nightstand. And the only physician in the country doing the trial study of a functional MRI is Dr. Edlow, who Baylie happened to be admitted under. There's just,
Wow.
can't make this up.
I know. And tell us again, I know you touched on it, but I just think it's so wonderful. Tell us again about how you found that story. Where, where she knew that this was, I mean, when I read that in your book, it just kind of took my breath away when you found her that she had written about herself.
The about the functional MRI?
About know about how she had been hit by a car. You found the book where it was,
Yes.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's
Yeah. It was
that's
just so
unbelievable.
crazy. So crazy. Yep. That's exactly it. She had read about her destiny before it happened. And that book became my guide. I mean, I sat in the ICU and read that book like, I need to know, I need to know, I need to know. What does she want? What does she want? What's she trying to tell me? And the more I read the book, the more I understood, because I knew what she had already. I mean, I could put myself in her shoes and I could imagine what she had read and how it felt for her. And they were talking about how difficult it was for these poor people when they finally discovered that they were conscious in these bodies and had not, they would say to them, you know, they'd been able to hear everybody talk about them and move them and give them a bed bath and talk about their feeding and their medication and everything, and they can't communicate. Um, and how awful of an existence that was. And I thought, oh, Baylie would be terrified of this. And she had said to me the year before, "Mom, there's something worse than dying." And I said, "What is that?" And she said, "Being trapped in a body that doesn't work, Promise me you'll never let that happen. And I said, Baylie, I promise I won't. Don't let that happen to me. It'll more likely to be me. And again, those words haunted me. And as I read the book, I remembered the conversation and I knew I had to let her go. She wanted to go.
Well, I could be wrong about this, but I don't believe she was ever suffering. I think that those souls that know that they're gonna cross, um, I think that they already leave their body. Because Tyler was in the hospital, it was just a day, but, and crazy things were already happening, and I've had mediums say he'd already left his body. I think that those souls that come back, they feel trapped. I believe that you found that book and you read that just so it would make it easier for you to make that decision. I don't think that Baylie was
Yeah, you're
suffering.
right.
I think
Probably
that
so.
Baylie was perfect immediately. And I
Yeah,
think that that was just her way of letting you know, "Mom, it's okay," because I think that's a hard decision for a parent. We didn't have to make it because in Arizona, they said once there's no brain activity that I didn't have a choice. But, if I had a choice, and now I'm grateful I didn't because, it's a hard one, and I think that was her letting you know, "I'm good," and that
it
this
was. Yeah. And so Baylie did have brain activity. The brain right
you
outside of
still
her
had
ears,
activity. Yes.
at the ears only, and it didn't transfer anywhere else, but the brain right inside of her ears lit up.
Wow. Wow.
No. So that was really hard, but I still knew
Mhm.
it wasn't enough for her.
Well, the title, I'll go back to the title, and it's Baylie, a true story, a life shattered, a promise kept. We know what a life shattered was. A promise kept, a secret revealed. Do you want to explain that title a
Yeah.
little bit?
The promise kept was my promise to her to let her go because she'd asked me the year before to let her go. And she couldn't have shown me more signs. It wasn't a gray zone anymore. It was crystal clear. The survival rate for her injuries at the time was 7%. When we got to Boston, the brainstem injury had 1% survival on its own. Combined with the other injuries in her brain, there was no documented case ever, ever, ever of anyone ever surviving it. And his words were, "This is basically incompatible with life." But here she is. And to me, people would say, well, that's a miracle, but it wasn't a miracle if she never opened her eyes again and never moved again and never had a thought transfer through her brain again. So the functional MRI was the answer for me. But that's the promise kept. And then a secret revealed for me was she's still here. And the secret revealed is she's communicating with me. She's not gone. The dimes in the nursery, the dimes. I can't tell you how many dimes to the point where I was scared. I was afraid of dimes because I'd be like, oh my God, another dime. I can't believe this. Where are they coming from? Who's putting them here? And a bit of a panicked feeling because they were in places they should not have been in the nursery, on the windowsill, on my bed. Um, and I'm like, my husband is the biggest skeptic ever. I mean, he is just such a non-believer. There is no way that he was putting the dimes there because he would not want me to be finding dimes. He wanted me to let this go. And I was like, this is crazy. And then the bluebirds, and then the butterflies, and then the text message to my husband about the car that Baylie had sent him just before she died, which was, um, Scott, this is going to be your new car. And she sent him a 2020. She was hit in 2018. She died actually September 27th of 2018. And in August, she sent him a text message with this car that hadn't been built yet. It's a 2020 prototype and says, this is going to be your next sports car. And we just laughed about it because it's a fancy car. And it was like, oh, sure. And then, sure enough, in 2020, Scott went to Florida shopping for a sports car. He's a big sports car guy. He had had Porsches before. And he came home with this car. And a little while later, he's looking through his phone and he's like, I can't believe this. Look at this text message. I read the text message. He had just got the exact car, same year, same model, and the same color. It was Skyfall Gray that Baylie
Wow.
sent him.
Wow. That's incredible.
Mhm.
That's just so beautiful. Well,
Yeah.
does anyone have any questions for Shawnee? And if not, this has just been amazing. How are your boys? How are your boys doing?
They're doing well now. They struggled for a good 2 years, but this, rather than cripple them, it gave them the drive to do the most they could, to live for Baylie, to live two lives, if you will, because they felt that they had to do amazing things in her honor. And they're both very successful. My oldest is getting married this summer. He's an electrician. My middle son runs
Um,
a company. He does very well. So they're good. Yeah,
That's awesome. I think that I mean, the siblings, and I remember Elizabeth said this to me because my son struggled terribly for, a while. Everybody's different, but it seemed like it lingered with him. And Elizabeth said they become such amazing, they become stronger. And it's true. I mean, when I get worried about my older son, at times, one time I said, well, I just don't want you to go into that depression. And he laughed then and he said, Mom, seriously, he said, I am so strong now. He said, I could, this is just a small problem. If I'm upset about this is awesome. This is a small problem. So they get
yeah,
so, they become very strong and they're just amazing people.
they
Well,
do.
Shawnee, why don't you give us a little bit without giving the book away, kind of a little summary to entice people. Your book is it's on Amazon, correct? And it's
Yes.
available on Kindle as well. So,
Yeah,
and again, maybe Lynn um, can put the title of your book. Oh, I have a question. Do you feel that Baylie is reincarnated in your second daughter?
I do.
That's a beautiful
So,
question.
yeah. So
Tell
when
us
we
a
went
little bit
back,
about that.
right. So the soul was not a match. I went back again. Well, first of all, my husband said, we're not going back for the last one. I was like, are you kidding me? I mean, I knew, like I knew there was no question in my soul. We are going back. I have to get this last embryo. And then they started calling saying, what do you want us to do with this embryo? And that's when my husband agreed because they would have to discard the embryo. It's another loss. So we went back and nothing was working. The cycles weren't working. I did 3 IVF cycles. They couldn't get my body to respond properly to the medication. I went to see the medium and um, he saw Baylie and he said, she's holding a baby. Did she have a baby? No, he said, she didn't have a baby. I don't understand the baby. And I said, I have a baby. And he said, no, she tells me she's in the nursery all the time with your daughter, with the baby who's there now. This is another. He says, are you pregnant? So then he said, Baylie spoke through him and said, Mom, you'll know me by my eyes. So I knew she was coming back. He says there's a doorway for her. She says she can come back to you. So he told me, the medium told me she could come back.
Wow.
So then when we were trying the IVF, I just knew. I said, I know that this isn't working and I know that I sound like I'm crazy, but I have to do this. So the um, fetal medicine specialist said, IVF doctor, he said, okay, because it's you and you've lost a daughter and this is the last embryo, I'm going to transfer the embryo. But I have to tell you that your uterus lining is 18 millimeters and there is no documented case ever of an embryo implanting in that lining. It will not work. So you need to prepare yourself for failure. It has to be 11 millimeters or less. It's not going to work. I said, okay, I'll take that chance. So we'll do this, he said, and we'll put it to rest. I said, yeah, okay. So we went, we did it. I said, what do you think the chances are? He said, best guess, maybe 10%. We transferred the embryo. We saw the flash of light. We came home. I just knew. I just felt so confident. I said, well, this is it. And I was pregnant. My husband couldn't believe it. Nobody could believe it. And then, sure enough, when Seraphina was born, I had read about reincarnated children. They talk about a birthmark. Seraphina was born, the first thing I did was look for the birthmark, and it was right there at the base of her neck, right where Bailey's brainstem would have been. She had a fairly significant stork bite. And Seraphina was born with the most beautiful blue eyes. And Bailey had always said, "Why didn't I get blue eyes?" Because her cousins all had blue eyes. And she said, "If I came back, I'd have blue eyes." And I knew this child, what she would look like. I had seen her in my dreams, which sounds crazy, but I saw the baby in my dreams. And I said to my husband, "She's going to have blonde hair and blue eyes." And he says, "How do you know that? You have brown eyes and I have green eyes. Highly unlikely." I said, "She's going to have blue eyes." And I also knew what she'd look like, and I knew her name. Seraphina is the highest ranking angel. So there she
Wow.
is. Strange things, though, that Seraphina has said. In fact, just recently, because she turned 4, she's communicating more now. And she said to me one day, she has told me before that she is Baylie. I've never said that to her. Scott wonders if she overheard me talking about the book. I don't think so. I've never, every time I work, I have a sitter, I'm away from them. But when she was 2, she pointed to Bailey's picture and said, "That's me, Mama." And I said, "No, that's Bailey." And she said, "Yeah, when I was big, that's when I was a grown up." And then she had a night, she said to me, "My horse was running, Mama, in the rain, and they were running him with a leash, and he's afraid of the leash. And that's why he fell and broke his leg." So, what got me there was not the story, because perhaps she had heard about Bailey's horse dying. What got me was that no one ever told her it was the trainer that was lunging the horse, and the lunge was the leash. How
Wow.
could she
That's
know?
incredible. That's
For me,
incredible.
for me, that was like
Well, I
I
think for
just
everyone, I think everyone hearing that, you know, because I
I
just think that's beautiful. But again, even if they reincarnate, not as our children or
right,
grandchildren, but they are still there when we cross.
still
They're
there, yeah,
they're there as we know them. So that's
yes.
I just want to
And
reiterate
and
that.
the other thing I will say, although there may be these memories that have reincarnated, Seraphina is very much her own person, because
Of
I've
course.
had people say, "Oh, that's so unfair for her to have to live up to the expectation of her older sister." That's not the case at all. At
No.
all. She's very much her own person, but I
Yes.
see Bailey in her, if that makes sense.
Well,
Yeah.
Baylie knows that you are evolved now and that you understand this, so she was able to do this for you, you know. So they know what we need. They know what we need and they're going to do everything they can. So I do want to read Debbie had made a comment how much she loves hearing about your daughter. Your relationship with her is so much like mine and my daughter, my soulmate, accelerated life. She knew ahead of time. I'm looking so forward to reading your book.
Oh, thank you. Yes. Yes, I've met so many moms who say just that, that their child was just this shining light.
Hmm. Absolutely. Well, do you have any closing statements for us all before I ask everyone to unmute and let them say goodbye? You have just about 3, 4 more minutes if you want to give us a few closing
Gosh,
statements.
I wish I had something really profound to say. I don't, because you all know this message so well, which is just that our children are still there, still with us. And I think what you're doing is absolutely beautiful. I'm so grateful for this, for the Helping Parents Heal. Um, the portion or the proceeds from the book support the foundation. So the purchase of the book, although on Amazon there is a portion of that that goes to Amazon, but for the most part, we are using those funds to support the foundation and make changes for students to make them safer.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank
I
you.
appreciate you being here. Um, Again, you can find her book on Amazon. It's in the Kindle version as well as the paperback. So thank you, Shawnee. Does everyone want to unmute and we will say goodbye?
Thank you, Shawnee, so much. Really enjoyed
Thank
hearing
you.
you.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Shawnee.
That was
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Sophie.
wonderful. Oh my goodness, what a wonderful
Amazing.
thing to listen to. And thank you for writing the book. And thank you all for interviewing Shawnee. And Have a wonderful evening, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Yeah.
Bye-bye,
Thanks, Carol. Love you
Yeah.
guys.
Bye.
Bye.
everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye.